Have you ever looked around your home once full of noise, laughter, life, and realized it's now just you in the silence? Jack Thompson never thought it would come to this. At 62, he had a loving wife, 2 grown kids, and a career he was proud of. But when his wife passed and the kids moved on, the house that once felt like a sanctuary turned into a quiet shell. And for the first time, he asked himself, what does it really mean to grow old alone? This story isn't just Jack's. It's the quiet truth many face after 60. The phone rings less, the days stretch longer, and the people you once cared for are now too busy to notice you're fading into the background. But this video isn't here to dwell on loss. It's here to help you take back control. Because healthy aging isn't just about exercise and eating well. It's about finding purpose again, rediscovering connection, learning the secrets to aging gracefully with strength, with clarity, and yes, even with joy. If you believe aging should be about living, not fading, stick with us. Please like this video if the topic resonates with you. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories and senior health tips. And tell me in the comments what has been the hardest part of growing older and how have you handled it. Now let's step into Jack's journey and perhaps reflect on our own. Much for one, financial security is emotional security. Jack never thought he'd end up sitting across from a friend, quietly discussing how much money they had left for groceries. But here they were, 2 men in their 60s sipping lukewarm coffee on a park bench. And beneath the surface of their casual conversation was something far heavier. A question neither had dared to say out loud until now. What happens if the money runs out? John was the first to speak it aloud. His voice was calm but serious. Jack, it's not just about surviving. It's about having choices. We've worked too hard to grow old feeling trapped. That moment hit Jack like a cold wind. He realized something painfully clear. Growing older wasn't just about health or time. It was about control. And without a plan, even everyday decisions could start slipping away. Aging gracefully requires more than vitamins and walking shoes. It demands preparation. A clear, realistic understanding of what lies ahead, not just emotionally, but financially. According to a 2024 report from the National Council on Aging, over 80% of adults over 60 are worried about outliving their savings. And nearly 1 in 3 say they've had to cut back on essentials just to make ends meet. That's not living, that's surviving. And no one deserves to spend their later years worrying about whether they can afford a doctor's visit, a home aide, or even a decent meal. Back at the park, Jack nodded slowly. His own story wasn't so different. He'd worked as a high school science teacher for over 30 years, retired at 61, a modest pension, a bit of savings, and a house that was finally paid off. But when Sarah passed, everything changed. Without her, the house felt too big, too quiet, and managing it all, repairs, taxes, even yard work, was starting to wear him down. He didn't say it out loud, but he was afraid. Not of being old, but of being poor, powerless, and alone. John leaned forward. I've started setting up a long-term care plan, he said. It's not just for medical stuff. It covers home modifications, daily help, if I ever need it, even assisted living, if it comes to that. Jack was surprised. He'd thought about it once briefly, but it always felt too far away. Too much. Too soon. That's the trap, isn't it? We tell ourselves we'll deal with it later. But later comes faster than we think. Real-life example, take Gloria Matthews, a retired nurse from Des Moines. At 68, she's active, sharp, and full of life. But she also lives with arthritis and early-stage macular degeneration. Instead of waiting, she sold her home last year and moved into a small condo near town. With the equity, she built a savings cushion, updated her health insurance, and joined a local senior co-op. Now she says, I'm not rich, but I sleep well at night, and I never worry about asking my kids for help. That peace of mind, that freedom is what financial stability brings. Living healthy after 50 means more than avoiding disease. It means living on your terms, choosing when to downsize, deciding what care you'll need and who provides it, and having enough to say yes to the small joys that still matter. A weekend trip, a home-cooked dinner with friends, a safe, warm place to call your own. If you wait too long, your choices narrow. If you plan early, they open wide. John and Jack finished their coffee in silence. But something had shifted. They both knew the conversation wasn't really about money. It was about freedom and the quiet power of knowing you're ready for whatever comes next. No matter where you are in your journey, remember this. Security isn't about the number in your bank account. It's about feeling steady, supported, unafraid. So today, ask yourself, what would it take for you to feel secure? Not just now, but in the years ahead. Because aging well starts with living well, and living well means planning with courage and heart. Certificate number 2, take charge of your daily health routine. Jack sat on the edge of his bed staring at the same wall he'd been looking at for weeks. The calendar was still turned to last month. His breakfast sat cold beside him, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly stuck. The kind of stuck that seeps into your bones. The kind that makes even getting dressed feel like a task too big. He wasn't sick, not in the way a doctor would diagnose, but he wasn't well either. Something had dimmed. The spark, the energy, the reason to move it was all gone. That morning he did something small. He put on his shoes and walked to the park down the street. Just a few blocks. The sky was clear, the breeze cool. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't even sit down, but he came home feeling a little lighter. That's how change begins. Not with a diet or a prescription, but with one step, literally. And Jack took another the next day and the next, until walking in the park became his anchor, a rhythm, a routine. Within a month, he'd met an older man who waved to him every morning, then a woman who walked her beagle at the same time. Eventually, someone invited him to a chess night at the community center. At first, he almost said no, but something inside told him to go. And that night, after sitting across the board from a stranger and laughing over a game he hadn't played in 30 years, he realized something. He was alive again. We often think senior health means managing pills, checkups, and avoiding falls. But real healthy aging living, healthy after 50, is about taking charge of your days, not letting them blend together in silence. The CDC reports that adults over 65 who engage in moderate physical activity 3 to 5 times a week see a 40% lower risk of heart disease and depression. But what those numbers don't show is the emotional shift. The shift from I exist to I live. In Spokane, Washington, 71-year-old Diane Monroe experienced something similar. After her husband passed, she spent months watching TV from sunup to sundown. A friend finally dragged her to a Tai Chi class at the local Y. Today, she teaches a beginner's group. It wasn't just movement, she says. It was medicine. For my body and for my spirit. Jack didn't plan a transformation, he just took a walk. But that small act led him to reconnect with others, with nature, and with himself. Now his days look different. He wakes early, puts on his sneakers, and walks with purpose. He makes his own lunch. Not because he has to, but because it gives the day shape. He volunteers twice a week and plays chess every Thursday evening. His doctor says his blood pressure has improved, but more importantly, his outlook has improved. He laughs more, sleeps better, and the house doesn't feel quite as heavy. That's the real heart of aging, gracefully regaining ownership of your time, choosing what fills your day, deciding how you want to feel at the end of it. Too many over 60 fall into patterns that quietly destroy health: hours of sitting, irregular sleep, skip meals, and no reason to leave the house. That's not retirement, that's retreat. But with a few daily habits, a walk, a game, a conversation, you can change the direction. Your body responds, your mind sharpens, your joy returns. If you're watching this and feel stuck in that same chair, ask yourself this. What would happen if tomorrow morning you just opened the door and walked outside? No schedule, no commitment, just a breath of fresh air and a few steps under the sky. It might seem small, but it could be everything. Health isn't just about pills. It's built with movement, sunlight, and conversation. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to begin. And the best part, it's never too late. 3, word to 3, find connection. Even if it hurts to begin again. Jack wasn't looking for anyone. In fact, after Sarah passed, he'd quietly promised himself he never would. Their life together had been deep, honest, and irreplaceable. And the silence she left behind still lingered in the walls, in the old teacups, in the worn-out cardigan she used to wear on cold mornings. But something unexpected happened at the community center one afternoon. During a game of chess, a woman walked in, late gray hair tucked under a floppy hat, eyes full of light, and a laugh that carried across the room like sunshine. Her name was Margaret. She wasn't loud or flashy. She didn't ask too many questions. But when she sat down beside Jack, something softened. At first, they barely spoke. She would show up on Tuesdays with her grocery list. He would help her carry bags to the bus. She would offer him half of her sandwich. He would lend her a book. Their friendship was unspoken, quiet, steady, like the rhythm of a rocking chair on a porch. It didn't look like love. Not the kind Jack had known, but it felt like something important, something healing. According to the National Institute on Aging, strong social connection in later life isn't just a nice to have. It lowers the risk of depression, reduces the chance of cognitive decline, and increases lifespan by over 30%. But for many older adults, forming new relationships after loss feels almost impossible because it hurts to begin again. Jack struggled with that feeling. Some nights he'd sit in the dark and feel guilty for laughing at one of Margaret's jokes. Other nights he'd lie awake wondering if Sarah would have approved. But Margaret never tried to take Sarah's place. She respected the space Sarah had filled. She simply pulled up a chair beside it. Over time, their connection grew. They went grocery shopping every Saturday, shared Sunday soup recipes, took short walks to watch the ducks in the pond near the park. Margaret had a way of bringing color back into the gray. One afternoon while they were cooking together, she told him about her own grief. Her late husband had died 5 years earlier. She'd tried to keep busy volunteering at a library and babysitting her grandson, but the loneliness still crept in, especially at night. Jack realized then that they weren't healing alone. They were healing each other. In Greenville, South Carolina, 66-year-old Curtis Hall shared something similar. After losing his wife of 40 years, he refused to speak to anyone outside his church. A friend introduced him to an online book club. One conversation led to another, and now he and a woman named Elaine travel together to state parks across the region. It's not about falling in love, Curtis says. It's about not facing life alone. Jack felt the same way. It wasn't about replacing the past. It was about making peace with it and walking forward even with the ache still in your chest. Then came the day Margaret received a call. Her son in Ohio was getting married. He wanted her to move in, help with the new baby, be closer to family. Jack sat still as she told him the news. She smiled, but her hands trembled as she reached for her tea. "I don't know if I want to go," she whispered. "I've gotten used to being here. With you." He wanted to beg her to stay, but instead he took her hand and said what he knew she needed to hear. "You should be with your family. You deserve that. I'll be fine." He wasn't fine. After she left, the house felt emptier than before, but strangely, he didn't fall back into the same darkness. Because Margaret had left him with more than memories. She had reminded him that companionship is possible at any age, that aging gracefully means remaining open to new chapters, even if they come wrapped in pain. Jack still walks to the pond. Sometimes he talks out loud pretending she's there. He still makes soup on Sundays using her recipe. And some evenings when the loneliness creeps in, he writes her letters he'll never send. But he's not alone in the same way anymore. Because he remembers that love doesn't disappear when people go. It lingers in the routines and the laughter, in the small moments shared. And even if it hurts, opening your heart again might just save your life. That's the quiet truth of healthy aging. We don't need to be fearless. We just need to be willing. Willing to try again. Willing to sit beside someone. Willing to say yes even when it scares us. Because the heart doesn't age like the body. It's always ready if you let it be. 4. Prepare emotionally for goodbyes. Jack had always known that aging came with loss. But knowing something and living through it are two very different things. He had already said goodbye to his wife, to the rhythm of a shared routine, to the comfort of being known without needing to speak. And just when life began to feel steady again, Margaret brought joy back into his days. They were never romantic in the traditional sense, but their companionship had become a quiet lifeline. Cooking together, laughing in the produce aisle, sitting in silence without it feeling awkward. Then one afternoon, she sat across from him at their favorite park bench, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes, usually warm and playful, held something else. Hesitation. "My son called," she said gently. "He wants me to move in, help with the new baby." Jack didn't speak at first. A small part of him had always feared this moment, the part that knew Margaret had a life outside their quiet bond, a family that still needed her. He wanted to ask her to stay, but he didn't. Instead, he smiled the best he could and said, "You should go. Your family needs you, and you'll be wonderful." His voice was steady, but inside something cracked. Margaret left 2 weeks later. Her goodbye was soft, just a hug and a promise to write, and then Jack was alone again. It wasn't the same kind of loneliness as before. It had edges, memories that replayed like echoes in the house. But he told himself he was fine, until the day he got the call about Mrs. Robinson. She wasn't family, but she was the closest thing he had to one in the nursing home. She always saved him a seat at lunch. She remembered the names of his grandchildren. She knitted him a pair of warm socks for Christmas. She had gone out that morning to visit her daughter. There was an accident on the highway. The staff told Jack gently, but it didn't soften the blow. He sat for hours after the call, staring out the window, watching the light fade. The truth hit him hard. At this stage in life, people don't just leave, they're taken. And sometimes there's no warning, no final word, no closure. This is the part of healthy aging we don't like to talk about. The reality that no matter how well we eat, how often we walk, or how strong our will is, we will face loss. And it will hurt. The National Institutes of Health reports that grief in older adults is more complicated. It's not just one loss, it's often a string of them. Friends, siblings, spouses, health, identity, all quietly slipping away over time. If we're not prepared emotionally, those losses can swallow us. That's what happened to June Waller in Tampa, Florida. After losing her partner of 38 years, she stopped answering the phone, missed doctor's appointments, let bills go unpaid. Her daughter finally intervened and helped her seek grief support. It saved her life. For Jack, healing came slower, but it came. He started writing again letters he never mailed, thoughts he couldn't say out loud. He joined a small group that met weekly at the center. Not a formal support group, just 5 people who knew what it meant to miss someone deeply. Through those quiet mornings and late-night reflections, Jack discovered something powerful. He wasn't just grieving people. He was grieving a version of himself. The man who had once shared holidays, whispered goodnights, made breakfast for 2. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant making space. In his heart, in his routines, in his spirit. He learned to carry the memories gently without letting them harden him. That's what aging gracefully looks like. Not shutting down when the losses come, but opening up. Letting yourself cry, letting yourself remember, and letting yourself continue. There is no shortcut through grief, no way around the pain. But there is a way through it with support, with honesty, and with spiritual strength. Jack walks alone now, but the walk feels different. Every step reminds him of those he's lost, but also of those he's still here for, himself included. He doesn't fear goodbyes anymore, because he's learned something most never do until it's too late. Saying goodbye doesn't mean the love ends. It means it changes form and continues to live quietly in the way you choose to move forward. With dignity, with softness, with courage. Honors thrive, embrace solitude without becoming isolated. Jack stood at the window of his home for the last time. He had spent nearly 4 decades inside those walls, raised his children there, held his wife's hand in the same kitchen they painted together. It wasn't just a house, it was a lifetime. But now it was too big, too quiet, too empty. He had fought the idea of moving into a senior living community for years, thought it meant giving up, thought it would feel like a waiting room for the end. But that wasn't how it turned out. It started with a simple moment, his daughter Emily visiting one afternoon, her voice quiet but firm. "Dad, you're doing everything alone. That doesn't mean you're doing fine." He didn't answer, but her words stayed with him. That night after she left, the silence pressed in a little harder. Jack sat on the couch and looked around. Dust on the bookshelves, an unopened letter on the table, a television flickering for no one. He realized he wasn't just living alone, he was drifting. And drifting at his age could become dangerous. He made the decision 3 weeks later, chose a modest nursing home just outside the city, not clinical or cold, but warm with flower beds and wide windows that let the morning light pour in. It was not surrender, it was a choice, a step towards something steadier. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, over 28% of adults over 65 live alone, and nearly 1 in 4 report feeling socially isolated. Those who experience chronic loneliness are at significantly higher risk of dementia, depression, and premature death. But the key isn't to avoid solitude, it's to avoid isolation. And Jack was learning the difference. At first, everything felt foreign. New routines, new faces. He missed the sound of his own clock ticking in his old living room, missed the way he could walk barefoot without judgment. But slowly a rhythm formed. He joined morning stretches on the patio, played chess in the game room, read aloud to a group every Thursday afternoon. One evening, a resident named Lou asked him to dinner. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. Jack discovered something he hadn't expected. There was peace in being surrounded by people who understood what it meant to lose, what it meant to start over, to find yourself in the later chapters of life unsure of how much story was left. He became a part of something again, not out of need, but out of quiet belonging. He started noticing others, those who had just arrived unsure, guarded, afraid. He began inviting them to meals, showed them where to get the good coffee, brought his old radio to play music on slow Sunday mornings. One day, a man named Walt moved in, 73, widower, barely spoke. Jack remembered how Margaret had once sat beside him quietly filling the silence until it no longer felt so loud. Now he did the same. Walt said very little at first, just nods and short replies. But a few weeks later, during an afternoon walk, he turned to Jack and said, "I didn't think I'd find a friend here." Jack smiled. Neither had he. That was the moment everything clicked. Living healthy after 50 isn't just about physical strength. It's about finding your place again, even when the world feels like it's moved on without you. Jack still missed his old life, still missed Margaret, still had nights when the loneliness crept in. But he wasn't isolated. He had rebuilt something around himself, something soft, steady, real. Because aging gracefully doesn't mean clinging to the past. It means honoring what came before while still reaching forward. Jack's story is proof that connection isn't just possible after 60. It's vital. You don't need a crowd, you just need a hand, a voice, a shared silence. Loneliness is real, but isolation is a choice. And connection, even the smallest, brings life back. And Jack had chosen life, again. Growing older comes with changes we never quite expect. Sometimes it's the loss of someone we love. Other times it's the quiet shift in who we are. But through it all, there is something that stays. Your strength, your wisdom, your ability to begin again. As Jack discovered, love doesn't disappear, it transforms. And aging, though difficult, brings its own kind of beauty, a deeper understanding, a softer kind of strength. If one part of Jack's story reminded you of your own, I invite you to share it in the comments. Whether it's a lesson about resilience, connection, or simply learning to live with yourself, your voice matters. And it may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If this message helped you feel more hopeful, please like the video. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future stories or doctor tips for older adults. We believe in living healthy after 50, not just longer, but with purpose and peace. And remember, your health is your greatest wealth.